Reading Between the Lines and Around the Text by G.J.V. Prasad. It is about waiting for Godot, and it's a 10-page article which I will be reading for you. Waiting for Godot has had a long history of interpretation, the play having begun to exercise the brain cells of audiences, readers, almost immediately after its first production. Its production history from the maximum secretary San Quentin prison in the USA to a mixed Hebrew Arabic production in Israel is one of the varied interpretation and receptions, and also illustrative of the uses to which we can put dramatic text at the most basic level as representative of real life situations. The play is universal, but as Vaclav Havel said, he saw it, as did many other East Europeans, as about the specific condition of human beings under repressive regimes. One can wait in different ways. The way in Waiting for Godot, incarnation of waiting for universal liberation and salvation, occupies one of the extremes of a vast range of possible forms of waiting. For many of those who, like us, lived in the communist era, waiting was often or even permanently of a kind very close to this extreme form. It is an interesting fact that in November 1989, the success of the Velvet Revolution led the crowds to shout that Godot had arrived, and that during the period of martial law in the early 1980s in Poland, "We are waiting for Godot" became a subversive way of declaring that one wanted the regime to fall. It is not that the political reading of Waiting for Godot was late in coming. One of the more eccentric and delicious interpretations of the play is an early one of Margaret d'Arcy, who said that the play should be seen as an allegory of nations. The tramps are Great Britain and France. They are free but have little else but freedom. Pozo is Russia, driving the slave peoples who can only repeat what is now a meaningless stream of totalitarian cliches. Godot is the United States for whom the free nations wait, expecting him to solve all their problems, as the small boy in the play says, "Surely he will come tomorrow." Daily Mail, 3 October 1955. The one thing that seems to support this argument is that Pozo and Lucky are called les comiques Stalinians, the Stalinesque comedians, in the first French edition of Waiting for Godot. This desire to give a coherent political reading to Waiting for Godot has inspired many others, practitioners of theatre and readers alike, to even fill in the gaps to support their interpretations. The famous dramatist Bertolt Brecht conceived of two possible versions of Waiting for Godot, one aimed at editing the language such as to make it more local with specific social roles for the characters, the other aimed at historizing the action by projecting scenes and music from revolutionary movements the world around. Brecht was a Marxist, playwright and theatre theoretician who saw theatre as part of the process of educating the proletarian masses. He wanted to reveal the falseness of the stage to get the audiences to think about the issues involved in a cool, logical manner, and thus help to change the world. Obviously, Brecht could not sympathize with any interpretation of Waiting for Godot that saw it as emblematic of the human situation in general, but saw the action of the play within a specific political historical context, a context that cried out for an agenda of change rather than mute acceptance. Brett did not concretize these plans, but in 1971, a student of his, Peter Palitas, staged the play of depicting Didi and Gogo as unemployed workers. The Yugoslavian playwright Miodrag Bulatovic adapted the play in 1966 in his Godot game, an optimistic version of Brecht's text. In his version, Godot the baker actually comes, but the other fails to recognize him as the savior that he is. In time, they attempt to kill him, but in vain, after which they completely stop all interaction with him. In the end, he leaves an immense stock of bread for them to eat as and when they desire. In 1956, when it was performed in Poland, the thaw that people had experienced there served as a trope to explain the play in terms of reflecting a society that deals with daily frustrations in the hope that an era of abundance is bound to come. The 1979 production of the play in the New Haven, Connecticut with black South African actors John Carney and Winston Nashona, playing Didi and Gogo, though intended to be apolitical, was viewed so politically as a South African version aimed at racking racial issues that in 1981, following a protest by local black leaders, it was banned from the Baltimore International Theatre Festival. The most famous production of Waiting for Godot did not change the text in any way at all. It was the setting the San Quentin prison, which brought a completely unexpected reading of the play. One of unmitigated realism. The prisoners had no difficulty understanding what the play was about. It was about them and their situation. Godot was the outside world, society. They knew what it was like to wait and kill time, and even as they waited for release, they had no expectations of it. As a reporter writing for the prison paper said, an almost tangible feeling of understanding and empathy could be felt as competent mimes plumbed the depths and soared to the heights, telling their story about going nowhere. Alan Simpson, the director of the first production of Waiting for Godot in the Republic of Ireland, says that the play worked differently in Dublin because the dialogues is more entertaining in Dublinese. The location of performance meant that the characters were also perceived differently. The general leading of the character of Pozo seems to be of an overbearing bullying tycoon. Because of my own Irishness, however, I see him as an Anglo-Irish or English gentleman whose excellent manners and superficially elaborate concern for others conceal an arrogant and selfish nature and a calm, almost unconscious assumption of superiority. As for Lucky, a sort of old-fashioned footman's coat and knee breeches, there are in Ireland a number of Anglo-Irish aristocratic families who live in grand but excessively dilapidated mansions without nearly enough money to do things properly. So Lucky's elaborate livery, moth-eaten and tattered. Beckett, of course, had no patience with people who wanted to read his plays in terms of the outside world, wanting to know the motivations of characters or even their values or the meaning of the play. He always maintained that everything that he knew about characters or situations had been written into this play already. However, the freedom to interpret what is written belongs to the readers. Beckett once claimed in an interview that all he was interested in was the shape of ideas. From that point of view, we have to see Waiting for Godot as a whole in terms of patterns and the creation of moods with words, silences, gestures, movements, and status. We have to see the play like a piece of dance or music in terms of rhythms and repetitions and playfulness, Beckett said in an interview to Charles Marowitz. Directors don't seem to have any sense of form in movement. The kind of form one finds in music, for instance, where themes keep reoccurring when in a text actions are repeated. They ought to be made unusual the first time, so that when they happen again in exactly the same way, an audience recognize them from before. He also said in another interview that Waiting for Godot was an allegro which breaks pauses and then the allegro starts again. This refers to the two-act structure, and about the structure Beckett said, one act would have been too little and three acts too much. But the rhythms of the piece can be found in the speech patterns and the changing pace of the dialogues. The dialogue and the silences 111 in the whole play and pauses 88 in the play. You have to hear the play to understand its impact. The voice, the sound, and the meaning are all important, and the first two add to the third. While there is little literally language, the dialogues and the silences convey a range of emotions, and there is a lot of humor generated by the language itself. In a play that is full of slapstick comedy, the number of questions and language games, almost skits that lead nowhere, the puns, allusions, the poetry and parody suggest that the play is about the uses and abuses of language as much as about any other theme. This concern with language is evident from the very first lines. There was a specific reason why Beckett retained the French-sounding "nothing to be done" as the first line of the play. First, it sounds strange to the English ear, as if you are hearing a foreigner speak or as if you are hearing a different dialect of your own language, or as if you are in a foreign land where you know the language but at one remove. Either the audience is at one remove from the language or the character speaker, or to consider a third possibility, both the character and the audience are at one remove from the language. The opening line of the play has quite a disconcerting effect, and it is only a seemingly throwaway line spoken after Estragon struggles to take his boots off. Further, Vladimir uses this line to immediately philosophize about life. I am beginning to come around to that opinion. All my life I have tried to put it from me, saying, Vladimir, be reasonable, you haven't yet tried everything, and I resume the struggle. As Vladimir muses about the struggle, as per the stage direction, you are bound to mentally refer back to the struggle that Estrogen had undergone to pull off his boots. To pull off one's boot is equivalent to a larger struggles of existence in the world of the play. There is nothing that is too trivial to be compared to anything otherwise considered metaphysical, or as belonging to a higher plane of thought. Language has suddenly acquired very slippery slopes, and there is no hierarchical order that you can safely turn to in order to assign a word or a phrase or place. This uncertainty is immediately reflected in the text lines. Vladimir, so there are you again. Estrogen, am I? What is Estrogen's comic uncertainty about? His own identity or his existence or his being in a particular spot a second time? This uncertainty is reiterated within seconds when, in reply to Vladimir's question as whether the same lot had beaten him again, Estrogen replies, the same? I don't know. The ditch where Estrogen spent the night is over there, said without any accompanying gesture. What or where is there? And what or who are they? Estrogen seemed most unwilling to commit himself to any concrete position or identification, while Vladimir seems intent on identifying and clarifying matters. The two seedy men seem to have been together for a long time or so, Vladimir implies when he tells Strogan that he has taken care of him all these years and that they should have thought of committing suicide a million years ago in the 19s. They actually act like an old couple, with Vladimir playing the caring and nurturing feminine role. The first 2.5 pages of the text establish with great speed and exactitude that you are in an alien land, or a land where language is used strangely and with uncertain hold on reality, where gender roles and biology seem to be at odds, where bodily functions are as important as metaphysical religious concerns. For those who remember that Vladimir is struggling to quote, "Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life." There is a further irony in the withered tree by which they are waiting, and the two companions are sick at heart as well as in the body. It is with anxiety and double that they wait for Godot. The Bible is an important reference point in this play, but it is only half remembered, a mythology that has lost all resonance, and often the butt of Beckett's humor. As when Estrogan says, "Speaking of the Holy Book, I remember the maps of the Holy Land. Colored they were very pretty. The Bible may be a religious book to some, but it is only a book here, and a child's picture book at that." Thus, the play establishes early that no significance is scared or fixed, that no connotative meanings can be attributed to any word or thing. The tree may sprout leaves in the second act, but all it means is that the tree has sprouted a few leaves. Nothing more can be read into that in this play. As you go along, this opinion is confirmed and strengthened. Instead of the usual "nothing is what it seems," here everything is what it is, and is not meant to seem like anything else at all. The trams are not sure what day it is, or whether Godot promised to meet them that day or even in that place. If one day is like another and one place is like another, then how do you identify time and place, or who are they, and how does one decide that about anybody, and what are their real names? But then what are names? What do names mean, and how do they decide anything? What does it matter if a leafless tree is a willow or not? Everything is just something to talk about, even if desultorily. The only role of language is to keep silence at bay, and along with any other action, to pass the time. That's why, again, early in the play, when talking of salvation, Vladimir asks Estrogen to return the ball once in a way. Everything is a game, a performance, but the performance is not so much to give pleasure to oneself or others as to play out one's existence. I do, therefore I am, and also its inverse. I am, therefore I do. All speech, all action does no more than suppress any anxiety about the meaninglessness of one's existence, and represents nothing more than a frantic and doomed attempt to impose some kind of order or sense of purpose on arid human existence. This bleak existential reading of life cannot appeal to everyone, yet the play's inherent comedy makes people laugh their way through performances. These are the antics of humankind as we race towards death without consciously facing up to it. Reading the play closely and in between the lines, all one is left with is the idea that people hold on frantically to their routine and rituals. whatever they may be, hardly ever daring to question the foundational tenets of their lives, content to carry on doing whatever they have always been doing. If this situation was seen not in terms of universal existence but in terms of existence under repressive regimes, then Godot is a distinct possibility that you could hope for. Also, if you thought that existential philosophy could be used to argue for a changeable and more equitable human world, one where salvation could come in the here and now to take care of the here and now, to make a better world for all, then Godot represents real hope. Little wonder that this most apolitical of plays has often been read in the most political of ways.